Yeah, so talking of eagles and spirits and a higher spiritual understanding of and where I am historically, very briefly, because you know I could talk for hours really about it, but where I am is right in the borders between Spain and France in the southwest, and it's historically, let's say historically, it was a place where there was, one for a better word, a new age around 1,000 years ago. And the Gnostic belief that took root in this area, which spread as far as, well, deep into Spain, went across to the East Asia, those areas, because they all had similar beliefs. The Bogomils had similar beliefs. So what you were looking at here was were cultures that were loosely around the albigeois people that believed in a different kind of Christianity, one that didn't worship the material world, where Rome was going and what Rome is still about and what the Vatican was about and still is about, and so on and so on. So you have here, about 1,000 years ago, not literally here at this castle, but you'll see from when I show you, you had a completely different culture, the seeds of a renaissance, actually, if you look at the history books in this part of Europe, which were massively different to what was coming out of officialdom, the church, the Vatican, the power, what was the Roman Empire, what became the official Christian dogma and belief and religion. And I'm not saying that Islam didn't have all those dogmas, because they had their own branch of the same kind of thing. It's just that they were probably more tolerant in some ways back then than they are now. So the Bogomil, the albigeois, the Cathar were in many ways seen as a Gnostic sect that, despite wanting to wander and come back and reminisce and be in some of the places I've been in before, is that I know from what I've felt and what I've looked at and read, that there are huge energy ley lines coming from this part of the world that feed all the way over to what I would suggest is the Levant, that area, and over to places such as Tibet and some say the pyramids and so on and so on. So it's a massive network of unseen energy ley lines that connect with this area here. And where I am at the moment, the castle is called Peyrepertuse, and it's was one of many Cathar strongholds against what was officially the Fourth Crusade. There was 3 crusades in the history books, but actually there was 4, and the Fourth Crusade was against the people of this region, and there were a lot of people killed. The genocide that took place in this part of the world was huge. Genocide that's taking place in Gaza, and it is a genocide, no matter how the media looks at it or how the people look at it. Everybody knows it's a genocide. The Palestinian people being removed from their lands, the Cathar, the albigeois, were removed from their lands. Some were allowed to stay on the pretense that they would convert to Roman Catholicism, and the Inquisition and all the rest of it that was left behind here to do its dirty deeds is something that I'll come back to in another recording. So yeah, it's a beautiful place. Despite its past, it's a beautiful place because the energy's still here. It's in the land, and my goodness, you know, you'll see from some of the cuttings I'm putting into this, just the views are absolutely breathtaking. They really do make you feel that you're looking out over the world. Now, that's, for me, that's you know, that's worth its weight in gold. And on that subject, the Cathars, they one of the reasons why they were removed violently by the Vatican under Innocent III was because they, through their Gnostic belief, had come to terms with and were preaching amongst the populations that spanned, you know, hundreds and hundreds of miles of this region, they were preaching a very different Christian doctrine, which was the world all around us, the world that we lived in, the material world, was an illusion. It was a creation of what they, in their language, called the devil or Satan, and the true peace, heaven, was found within. Now, where have you heard that before? Obviously, if you've followed certain teachings, and Christianity, it's come from the teachings of the one they call Jesus, and other religious icons, let's say, over the years, like Buddha and all the rest of them. I mean, whether they existed or not is another subject, and I'm not even going to go into that. What I'm looking at is here in this diary is the fact that the Cathars had this understanding that the physical world was a distraction from ourselves, and the only way in which we could come back to who we truly were or are was by seeking the kingdom of heaven within. Now, let's call them the preachers, or the parfait, as they were known in the language, or the bonhomme. Many of them, why they call them all bonhomme when a lot of them were women is another probably a misuse of language. Maybe they were just men later, but originally there were a lot of women priests, which ironically is weird, isn't it, when you think about what the 21st century Christian Church of England is trying to or is doing, which is making women priests. I mean, shit, they were doing it here 1,000 years ago. I mean, crikey, it's taken a long time to come round to the fact that the equality between the sexes, no matter what you believe in, is something that the church never really had in mind, and now they're having to do it because of the times that we're in. Personally, I won't listen to either sex in terms of religion. I couldn't give a shit, but that's just my view. But it's interesting that the parfait, or the Cathar priests, or the priestess, as they were women, weren't they? And the Vatican didn't like that. They wanted them out of the way, which probably led to the reasoning and the logic behind the burning of witches, and that huge crusade to remove witches and remove women. And some say the goddess, and some people have linked it back to Magdalena and the bloodlines of Christ and all that. And I'm in the area. This is the area for it if you want to discuss it, but I'm not really looking at that. It's something that will come up in the diary as I go along, but it's not something that has interested me over the years. What's interested me is the meat and two veg, the real feeling of spirit outweighing the crap of the physical world in all of its forms. So yeah, this is the place which I came to 20 years ago, and it had a profound effect on me, a huge effect. And I mean, just coming back just today and retracing the steps, and I've been driving a lot, as you probably gathered, if you've been following the diaries. And I'm being joined now by security, because I'm not meant to be up here, I don't think. Oh no, maybe not. Hello. It's funny, I'll tell you one thing which is interesting, is that a real observation about life is that this place was empty when I came up here. In fact, there were a lot of people watching some hawks being flown around. And nature abhors a vacuum, doesn't it? It really does. Instantly you create a space and it's filled. I mean, if I could show you, and I'll get the camera and show you, but I'll put it back in a second, is that the amount of people now that have turned up here to look at the spectacular views. Understanding that nature abhors a vacuum is one of the greatest, for me, one of the greatest understandings of how we create what is the things that we need in the so-called illusory material world. And to understand that is to not have any fear of nothingness, or have any fear of having nothing, or having fear of being without, and all of those things, because we're not without, and we're never alone. I mean, I've been alone in the logical sense on this journey since I left England 3 or 4 days ago, and I've been driving alone. And I mean, I do a lot of things alone anyway, but it's not such a big thing for somebody like me. But to be alone is not a weak thing. To be alone is a powerful thing, because you're never alone. There's a difference between being lonely and being alone. And as I was saying here, going back to this idea of a vacuum, no matter where you place yourself, if you put yourself in this space where you want to create something and you want to have a different outcome, then first, one of the things we must do, in my view, is create a vacuum, knowing that that vacuum will be filled, because it always is. Whether it's people or whether it's a bird that flies across the sky, it doesn't matter, because the vacuum is still filled. I'm being filmed, and I'm saying this because I've been asked questions since what's been going on in Gaza by friends and people who are aware of metaphysical things, saying that if we focus on what's happening in those parts of the world, and we focus on the horror of what is Gaza now, are we not adding to that reality? Well, it's a bit new agey that for me, but I can understand why people ask the question. No, we're not adding to that reality. By focusing on it, we're changing that reality. Just as if we go into this space of giving energy and creating this vacuum, we know it will be filled with something else. And going back to the idea of sitting on ley lines, where it was, you know, where these castles are mainly built, then if we put some clear love and intent into what we're doing, and we focus our energy into these spaces, and we send our love to Gaza, even though we know what's going on there is anything but love, we will have an effect on the outcome eventually of what will be peace in the Middle East. It might not seem like that at the moment, but there will be peace in the Middle East. There has to be. Which brings me to another subject, and I've talked about this to friends, but the idea of what Jerusalem really is. And this is my view of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is not a physical place. It's not, even though it's on the map and it's in what we understand as Israel, it's not a physical place. And the Cathars knew a truth. Jerusalem was a place within ourselves. In fact, for them, as they built the seeds of the Renaissance, and as they spread their music, their love and their creativity and real spirituality in this region, they said that this area was the New Jerusalem. For them, this was Jerusalem. William Blake said Britain was Jerusalem. And we're not, like I said, we're not talking about physical locations, we're talking about a spiritual location. Something that is probably woven into geometric line structures. If we could see outside of the physical veil, the wind's picking up here now, then we would see these amazing light structures. We would see these geometric forces of energy that intersect the grid of what science has called, you know, and film has called the Matrix in recent years, and what the Cathars understood as the work of the devil. Well, why did they say that? Why did they call it that? Well, the reason was very simply, and I'll go into it in more detail another time, but the reason for it was because they understood that everything that was of a physical sense was a construct that related to the beginning of the creation of what we would understand the world. And I think that what the Gnostics generally believed was that the creation of the world in Genesis and in the biblical sense was actually the creation of the illusion, the matrix. Let there be light, and in the beginning was the Word. Well, actually in the beginning, the word in Greek is logos, and in the beginning logos means something completely different to word. It has a feeling behind it which is very different to the idea of just a written word. Even though word is vibration, and so is a symbol, and so is sound, it is more of a combination of word, sound and feeling, and all of those combinations come together for the creation of this illusionary world. So I've digressed a little bit there, and I've come backwards and forwards, and it's a beautiful place. I mean, I'm just so happy to be not driving now and sitting in this solid illusionary reality and soaking in what's left of the energies of the people that were once besieged up here, lived here in peace before they were besieged. And yeah, it's truly an amazing place. I'm going to go for now, and I will come back and record more of these, but just as I'm going, I'm going to show you the view. I don't know whether you can see it.